Can you believe that anti-Semite Samuel Hyde went into a poor old Jewish man's home and terrorized him over twigs and cookies? He's a gorilla. I want everyone to say it. He's a gorilla. Never let him forget that he's a gorilla. You don't know he very well, do ye? Sam's not going anywhere. That's right. You know, a lot of people are pulling up old clips and messages of Hulk Hogan being racist, and I genuinely think, even if he is, it all started with trying to impress his boss, Vince McMahon, and get a more favorable position, because that's the guy with the real affiliate. That's the guy with the real issues. I forgot the specific word, but he's got problems. Problems up in the chrome dome there. Although he does have a very full head of hair, which is very frequent for Irish people, you know what I'm saying? Every saint I've studied is an absolute genius. Whereas the Gnostics and the alchemists that call themselves Illuminati are dull and boring, endlessly rehashing the same few drops of wisdom and only really scratching the surface of gnosis. But the true goal of their works as court viziers is to offer comfort in sin and destruction while they rape and pillage our beautiful world. The most decisive qualities in a person are often unconscious and can only be perceived by others or have to be laboriously discovered with outside help. That's Carl Gustav Jung, a true alchemist and finder of the true lapis. Some wisdom for your head. The dollar is now just a leverage token for buying cryptocurrencies and stocks effectively. So many people are into that these days that that's effectively where the fluid is in our fiat economy, which is always set up to be that way. It was always set up to be the backbone for drugs instead of, which is also what cryptocurrency is, but it's just a more honest and advanced form of it. The backbone for smuggling drugs through Southeast Asia and Afghanistan and Central America and Southern America was always meant to be that way. Always. That's exactly why we have such a fiat currency. And it's not backed by actual work and actual wealth, but indeed a leverage token. And the dollar is just a leverage token for, even though it used to be the other way around, cryptocurrencies and stocks these days. It really is. On top of having no market cap, the dollar retains less wealth than the artificial prices people are willing to pay for a stake in a concept. Our country now has less value than the imagination because it cares about us less than we do each other. I've been a long-term advocate for Bitcoin, close to a decade now, not fully, but that has been screwed with by world governments, and that's very, very important to note. What I'm saying is, invest in fart bucks, invest in cum token, invest in poop coin. Not really, not really. Grow food. Duh. Grow food. My OBS is lagging a little bit. Come to find out, it wasn't anything involving specifically spaces on Twitter. It was actually everybody's OBS glitching at around the same time. Fascinating stuff. It's definitely not as fluid. I might actually have a couple of like 0.5 second delay in the video to the audio if what I'm picking up is translating correctly. So my apologies if that bugs some people. It certainly bugs me. There would be very few things listed more contemptuous by our European ancestors than chopping down 300, 400-year-old trees because you don't want to rake or something like that, or just on a bet, or because you got drunk, or because you're trying to trigger the liberals, therefore you own the liberals, therefore you're saving the country from the evil that they do, the evil that men do, and not sinking even below the levels of the people that you're criticizing and internalizing their own behavior, the cherry-picked worst parts of their behavior, and then replaying it out through your projective subconscious. But insurance companies have been doing the heavy lifting in regards to inducing an environmental apocalypse. It's super funny that they managed to project and flip on its head the whole environmental apocalypticism, because that whole Extinction Rebellion thing, the actual environmental apocalyptics, what do you know, that's funded by big business? It's a plant. And like, I can't even conceptualize. Oh, actually, no, never mind. I can conceptualize. Let me lay it out for you. It's called the death drive. And this is actually the long-term result of the whole Mercury immortality potion not working, Neuralink brain chip AI immortality not working, any of the other things that have been proposed throughout the ages to achieve immortality in the people who worship the world and themselves. It's ancient, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And that death drive will make you do what our ultra elite do in private circles, do what the Illuminati and the proto Illuminati did, do what the Roman imperial cult did. It will make you hurt other people so that you feel better about sinking through time and becoming less and less capable as you age. So you clutch to the pain of people who have what you do not. And those are the beads that you clutch in order to feel better about losing what they have, you see. It's very, very simple. And the death drive will, as young people say, we need to preserve things for generations upon generations. The death drive, even those young people can experience it later on in their lives, the death drive will forcibly make you destroy things if you get stuck into that cycle. It's very wise to try and avoid that cycle, my friends. Literally, because it will infect people at a very young age, given the internet and how it can plug people's brains into certain possessive mindsets, demons, if you will. Guess we'll all be enjoying floods, heat waves, and extreme weather events. Weather modification is real. It's just not laser beams. It's the slow mulching up of God's beautiful balance. I think I figured out the root of American aggrievement politics. It's not that complicated. You know, the all-seeing eye above the pyramid on our dollar? That represents God's omniscience. It's taught in catechism that God is all-knowing. It's an Old Testament as well as Calvinist assumption that God contains in his plans all the evil and pain and destruction that ever there was, that they do not belong to man. Lutheranism, Catholicism, Orthodoxy, Copticism, they believe otherwise. They believe that we have free will, and the nature of the fall is derived from every sin we've done since Adam and Eve. But some people have a culturally low IQ conceptualization of this issue and become aggrieved with God, seek to change the face of God, Tikkun Olam, seek to gain worldly goods to prove their holiness. And this is actually the origin of white versus black, because the white soul, which is an ancient pagan concept of the white fae and the black fae, which is to say overworld, underworld, heaven, hell, angel, demon, etc., etc. Just the constant realization of these archetypal forces that are shot through reality in different names. But what it does is, just like how witches were really never a thing up until James I decided to create demonology and inject it into the faith of a Reformed Christianity, John Calvin being the father of Reformed Christianity, not Protestantism, but Reformed Christianity. They're actually starkly different, because Lutheranism, and to a lesser extent some forms of Anglicanism, actually retain a vast majority of their sacraments and keep a relatively contiguous tradition to Christianity, whereas Reformed Christianity, which was very popular in the Netherlands, in the London greater area, which there's a tremendous amount of genetic interplay, like a ton of genetic interplay, likely from this very religious uprising, Reformation. And that's exactly the religion of our founding fathers. Even if they were good Christians, they still believed in this white versus black. It's not skin color, but it actually was projected onto skin color in the form of racial politics. It's about whiteness in the Calvinist dialect is about being baptized, and this is found in Mormonism very specifically, carried forward up until like 1970 something. Whiteness is being baptized in the purest waters and living the purest life and being the most uncorrupted by pain, which is like really, really different from like the lessons that Christ taught in his crucifixion. And this is one of the reasons why they cannot abide by a suffering Christ on the cross. They cannot abide by it. And there's also a little bit of interplay with the Lutherans being German and the Catholics being, Latinx. But there's also, Irish, so, eh. But that's it, So, back to God's omniscience. It's taught in Catechism that God is all-knowing. It's in the Old Testament as well as Calvinist assumption that God contains in his plans all evil and pain and destruction that ever there was. So, we have free will, and the nature of the fall is derived from every sin we've done since Adam and Eve. And regardless of people in the past's continuation of human sacrifice, of which is not accepted by God anymore, animal sacrifice is not accepted by God anymore. I don't think God ever accepted a human sacrifice, to be perfectly honest with you. I think that is a big separation between Abraham actually creating the covenant of the Jewish people and God, of the ancient Hebrew people and God. Abraham rejected the Canaanite faith of human sacrifice, and ergo, that sort of sacrifice is no longer accepted in the temples from that moment on, from Christ's death on. And people who do not recognize that have culturally low IQs and are reviled by the world that has grown past it, the entire world that has grown past it. Even the people think that the people in the Far East don't have a conceptualization akin to Christ's, but they did in 100 AD pick up Christian philosophy through Confucius. It's true. One big thing the boomer generation has it's got to own is letting Steven frickin' Spielberg define so much of the contours of their assumptions, till an entire race of people, the Germans, were viewed as the world's toilet. That is wrong. That is wrong. And also being deathly afraid of sharks, despite the fact that there is a tremendous amount of things that are more dangerous than sharks. Cars, for instance, are in the realm of tens of thousands of times more dangerous than sharks. I know there is a, exposure element to that, as in you're around roads more than you're around the sea, right? But still, it must be noted. Every time you have Jewish people come in, they automatically just start killing a bunch of animals. And they do it as a sacrifice, as a scapegoat, but as well as because they're afraid. Like the old stereotypes of Jews being bad at sports and being afraid of everything and being nitpicky and willing to do anything to save a penny. Those stereotypes are all accurate. But whether or not you choose to overwhelm that instinct with love, that culturally endowed instinct with love, and then raise generations without that culture, that has nothing to do with ethnic Judaism. That has everything to do with the fact that you accept that we have free will and you try to do better with it. Speaking of which, I think Randy Fine represents the death of the Own the Libs, Trigger the Libs movement. That movement started around 2016, 2017 or so, and propelled many people to fame, wealth, and power solely on the amount of hate watching they could generate. Think Keemstar and Boogie, for instance. But now, especially with even APAC cutting ties to Randy, there is a signal of a vibe shift that is both indicative of our modern political polling, but also the things that people cannot contain, the things that the big tech companies are allowing now, the things that will carry forward into the future decades as the sin and pain of 9/11 is finally exhausted from being able to wrench, to squeeze anything left out of the American people, with new aggravations constantly being levied on the Israeli people, but being isolated more and more. You know, the Holocaust legitimately did seem like Hitler taking up the non-chosen Jews, as in the Jews that did not submit their entire lives to the creation of Israel in the proto-Zionist project, and mulching them up to prove to the Zionists that did how their path was correct. Just in the Calvinist concept, Cohenist concept, that worthy, unworthy, black and white, you know, that to suffer is to be unholy, which is flipped on its head, reality flipped on its head. It's very Canaanite, and the more you study the Nazis accurately, the more you recognize, yeah, they were legitimately using Hitler as a drug-addled pop star to push forward this occultist narrative and destroy Christendom from within. That's what it was. Most hate-washing has been cooked up by the neoconservative bubble, going back to my theory of the Brooklyn Bolsheviks joining the Republican contingent after communism collapsed, and being so egregious that they induce a desire for communism via reverse psychology. Though us internet denizens have witnessed far longer this sort of psychology, and politics for that matter, now the vast majority of people are plugged into the internet, and the extreme censorship of the Biden admin juxtaposed with the lax nature of the second Trump admin, forcibly so in both cases. The information is not only available but sought out. Now people know the best way to deal with a bully is to laugh at them. And that is true. That is wisdom. It's really depressing, though, that modern Kiwi Farms is doing apologetics for commies like Ethan Klein just because they're Zionists, and loathsome dung eaters like Asmongold. And it's all because the leader turned into a mouth-breathing golem over a handful of shekels. Like, if you're not noticing this, what's the through line between praising Netanyahu, wanting to get on Asmongold, and doing apologetics for Ethan Klein? The through line for all those forces is that they're all rabid Zionists. That's the through line. You know, when I never watched him, but I do, and I've read up on him. I do believe that Ethan Klein was critical of Israel 4 years ago, 5 years ago. But as I have said multiple times on this show, there was an activation that took place about 6 or so months after October 7th, when they realized that they could legitimately, for at least a period of time, get away with ethnic cleansing, which they did for a long period of time, but most thankfully to the Biden administration. Just like all these gigantic trucks and cars that you see all over the road, that's literally because Biden gave massive tax breaks to the creation and the purchasing of extremely heavy vehicles. So despite the fact that everybody is now suffering, whenever one of these pavement princesses loses control and hits people, it's usually a casualty event when it didn't need to be. And because they don't have, a lot of these, especially shitty Rams, don't have crumple zones, they are usually a casualty event for everybody inside of the cockpit as well. So, you know, everybody's saying, oh, I just need a big truck for my family. Get a van. Get a van and drive safe. Okay? It's that simple. Trump has ended so many wars. Man. My first ever vote for him is paying dividends. I absolutely knew that exactly what he needed was to be a loser for once in his life, that he would grow out of that into a true emperor, embodying the world soul. He's ended the India-Pakistan war, the Israel-Iran war, the Thailand-Cambodia war. I wish he'd end the Ukraine war, but it's no coincidence that Netanyahu visited D.C. for like 2 weeks when he decided to flip and double down on the Biden policy there. And that really sucks, but you have to understand that his family is heavily married into top-level Israeli politicians. So it would be very, very great if the Miriam Adelson Trump contingent of the Jerusalemite, non-Tel Avivite, Jerusalemite faction of Israeli politics would take over from the Tel Avivite faction of Israeli politics. I'd be fine with seeing that. I don't want to see a destruction of Israel. I want to see its transformation into something more beautiful, because I know that almost every Israeli has at least a sparkle of a conceptualization that they could do better, that they could be better, that they come from more endurance stock than what is being represented in the cowardly, sick, and depraved individuals that are controlling things. 40 to 60% of the population of Israel is royally pissed off with Netanyahu, and rightfully so. And I stand with them. I stand with them. I do not stand with these freak sellouts that think that Netanyahu should go even further and drag every single one of them into the firing, line of fire, just so, both sides can lose. Watch, it's coming. They're going to start saying that, I actually always wanted both sides to lose. Watch, it's coming. It's coming. Mark my words. It's coming down the pipes. But people won't forget that easily. People will not forget that easily. Trump hasn't gone to war with China, or Mexico, or Canada. He hasn't taken Greenland from Denmark yet. He's ending USAID fully, which was announced recently, which will end petty conflicts, poisoning, and mutilation around the world. He's been cautious with Yemen, as they are far more capable than many assume, and not getting back into Afghanistan. He deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. Obama got one in the invaded 4 countries. Trump deserves a more valid Peace Prize than that. This is exactly why the media is pressing him on Epstein. Who he killed and prevented from offending again. They didn't get their precious Iran war that they had queued up for decades and decades, and I am so glad Trump is who he is, and a lot of other Americans are too. Did you know that an 8.8 magnitude earthquake is the equivalent of 2.6 trillion ravens expending an entire day's worth of energy? It's also the equivalent of 25,000 nukes going off at the same time. That's the 6th largest we've ever recorded in our 150 or so years of recording these things. I hope the people of Hawaii stay safe, because apparently Oprah didn't open up her road until like 1 minute before the tsunami hit. So there's a road that allows people to evacuate up to higher ground. She doesn't care. She does not care. People had to go all the way around. I mean, I guess you got to hide those traffic kids. It takes a while. All right, y'all. Everybody stay cool. It's very, very hot out there. Cheers.